All righty. Howdy, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Okayest Trapper podcast. As always, we're brought to you by a handful of sponsors who help us kind of keep the lights on. Most of it's around fitness, Mountain Tough Fitness, Blokes Modern Men's Health. If you want to get on TRT or get your supplements in check, everything that'll help you go further, farther on the trap line, as well as Trapline Beard Oil. If you have a beard, you stink, get some beard oil. It'll help you out. It'll at least make the wife happy. So go check them out. Look in the show notes. There's promo codes for each and every one of those. So if you want to get a little discount, go and do that. But today's guest, been going back because, like myself, he's a relatively somebody who's had a lot more success in the Wolf Woods than I have had so far, which I'm excited to talk about. But Chuck Kelly, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. It's good.
Yeah, I'm pretty pumped. With that though, we always get the show kicked off with, just the base question of what is your first core memory of ever being exposed to trapping in your life?
Oh man, it'd probably have to be Boy Scouts, and I don't even really remember it all that much. But I know we shot 22s and set like little snares or something for squirrels. But as far as actually remembering it, I spent 8 years in Papua New Guinea, and the guys there would trap these little marsupials called cuscus, and they were in like live traps. So, I mean, I remember seeing that and being like, "Oh, this looks a little." I mean, it's definitely tribal, but that's what they got to do over there. So, yeah,
Wow.
that'd
Well,
be
okay. Well, I will say you just opened up the literal can of
yeah.
worms and questions that I have to ask because we've gone back and forth a little bit, and we kind of trap in the same general vicinity.
Hmm.
I know nothing about your background, which is what I'm excited about. But 8 years in Papua New Guinea, that feels to me like a relatively good place to start.
Yeah, I mean, I did a little time in the military in the reserves. Got done with that, and I was broke. I had like 10 part-time jobs, and
Well, before that, I'm going to ask some questions along the way to help maybe
okay.
paint the picture. But so the reserves, what state were you in when you were in the reserves?
I was in this lovely state called California.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
So you did the
Um,
reserves there, and what branch were you in?
that was the Air Force. I did the Guard for a little bit. Sorry, I did Air Force and then transitioned to the Guard. So,
And was that straight out of high school? Was that like after some time? Like what was the precursor for you going in the military?
how much time do we got?
We got plenty of time. Like, we're getting
uh,
the background. I want to see how you're gotten to now where you're catching wolves like a madman.
um, So no, it wasn't right after high school. Right after high school, and kind of during high school, I was working on old cars. I met up with this guy and got into restoring classic Chevys. Realized that was not kind of sustainable. Like just I don't know, kind of relying on people's interest, for money isn't always a good thing, especially with a market that fluctuates like that. So I started getting into EMT and like fire department stuff. Um, I got hired with a fire department um, in San Diego. I was there for like a year and a half. The recession happened.
Hmm.
14 of us got laid off. Um, so I can't remember how old I was. I was in my mid 20s, which for going into the military, I guess it's a little bit older. So I wanted to have my cake and eat it too, and went into the reserves. And in hindsight, I probably should have just gone active duty, but whatever. Um, so didn't do much of anything in the Air Force, especially as a reservist. But I was looking for some sort of excitement, and
Were
I
you
had
doing firefighting too in the reserves, or what was kind of your MOS when you were?
uh, it was like flight paramedic stuff, because I had my paramedic license at the time. Um, so, um, yeah, got out of the reserves and needed money. Like in '08, the recession kind of hit me hard. I lost a house, got laid off. Um, so had a bunch of part-time jobs, and I had a buddy that was contracting overseas and shotgun my resume out to a bunch of places and had a few jobs, but the main one that stuck that I really enjoyed was the one in Papua New Guinea. So that
Okay,
was
a perfect lead up. But now, so contracting, what, what part of like GWAT or like that era of the military required contractors in Papua New Guinea? Maybe like the landscape of as much as you can talk about, like of what you were doing there, and obviously it sounds like you were with Indid while you were out there, so maybe a little bit about the why if you can.
yeah, I mean it was we were mostly tasked with looking after like oil and gas folks
Hmm.
because there was a lot of that going on. But where we kind of slid into the mix was because Papua New Guinea's mm, somewhat somewhat owned by Australia. They have their independence, but Australia gives them a lot of money. Australia's military's over there, but they had sold all their Blackhawks to I forget who they sold them to. So they didn't have any Blackhawks. They had the uh, MH-46 or I can't remember what helicopter it was, but it wasn't rated for search and rescue work.
Hmm.
And Papua New Guinea is one of the, or at the time, was one of the most dangerous countries to fly in just because of regulation and standards and maintenance and all that. So um, we were kind of tasked with that. And like I said, most of it was oil and gas work. But we did do some stuff with the PNG military. Um, and if you remember at the time, there was uh, asylum seekers coming from the Middle East through Indonesia and Asia trying to get into Australia.
Yep.
And Australia didn't necessarily want them, so they put them out on these islands and these detention centers. So that was also part of our mission, if you will.
Yep. Cool. And then so when you were there and you were working with Indid, tell me a little bit about like you said they were doing live trapping of something called Cuss Cuss.
Yeah, it's like a little marsupial that would nocturnal, lived in trees. But that was, I mean, they still eat people over there, so they'll eat just about anything. And yeah, I mean the island's pretty cool. It's the second largest island in the world, 850 indigenous languages. Um, and the people there, there's not very many roads, so they, very tribal. They can look at somebody and tell what village they're from, and um, it's a pretty wild place.
But 8 years. So you were there 8 years. I'm assuming on and off, probably coming
Yeah.
back to the
Yep.
States. But in those 8 years, that's kind of as an adult, right? Like putting your Boy Scout basic snaring aside, that's the first time you saw somebody, really trapping, whether it be for sustenance or whatever. But what were their live traps like? And what were you
Uh,
thinking at the time when
they
you were
were
seeing this happening?
I mean, they were all like homemade out of bush material, very rudimentary, very basic stuff, but it worked. I, when you live off the land, stuff's patterns, like we might get out for a couple days a week and try to track wolves or deer, elk, and you think you kind of learn their patterns, but I mean, these folks are generations of doing it, and every day out in the bush. So they're very proficient at it.
Do you remember like any specific memory of seeing these live trapped cuss that stands out to you? Like whether it be like the means in which they, bait and lured them in, or like what they did, from a dispatch perspective. Was there anything that just kind of either shocked you or just like, wow, that's some gangster stuff?
Uh, I wasn't too interested in it at the time. I mean, well, what they would do too is they would they would break all their limbs so that they
Mm.
couldn't run away, but they'd still be alive because they can't like preserve the food once they kill it. So I remember seeing that thinking, man, this is pretty effed up. But um, yeah, I mean, as far as like the tribal stuff I saw over there, that was pretty mellow.
Yeah,
um,
it's funny. I mean, that's a good, probably a contrast to the type of trapping we do stateside,
oh
right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
you hear all the things about cruelty, like putting aside BMPs, putting aside the fact that most of our modern day traps are pretty good at allowing bycatches to be let go unharmed, and clearly making any lethal traps very good at doing just that, like not
hmm,
prolonging any misery. But yeah, seeing how an indigenous tribe might not have that same modern view
yeah,
was probably pretty jarring, like you said.
yeah. I mean, they they do what they got to do to survive, and
Now, did
you
you
know you
try Cuscus at all?
no, no, hell no. No, I I tried we ate a chicken one time because they had chickens running around everywhere, and one of my buddies, he was like, dude, I'm not eating that. And I'm like, why not? And he goes, where do you think these people take a shit at? Like, what do you think these chickens are eating? As I'm like putting chicken in my mouth, I'm like, oh god. So yeah, and it seemed like every time I was over there, I was sick somehow with some kind of GI thing or some respiratory virus. But so I kind of got to a point where I was just living off MREs and biscuits and peanut butter, whatever we could get that was in a package.
Yeah,
So
sealed and ready to rock. So I'm going to do the quick math here. So about 8 years going back and forth. So 2016 rolls around, a couple years
okay,
before COVID.
yeah.
Where's that put you?
So yeah, you're pretty good at that. So 2016, uh, my wife and I moved out to Idaho. The
You get to fly the pre-COVID banner with pride.
Yeah, 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 for sure. Yeah, we got really lucky with that. Like we went around. We knew we wanted to leave California, but we looked at Washington, Oregon, Nevada, um, Arizona. We looked all over, and w- Idaho was kind of our next stop. And we were traveling in Spain at the time, and we met this guy at a restaurant because we got there at like 9 o'clock at night, and they still weren't open, typical
Yep.
Spanish style. So we're talking to the owner of the restaurant, and we're like, "Oh yeah, we're from the States," and he's like, "Have you ever been to Boswa, Idaho?" And we're like, "What?" And we kind of figured out he was saying Boise, Idaho, and um, he was telling us about the bass culture and all that, and he has family over there, and we were like, wow, all right, like, we got to go check it out. So when we came out for our visit, we, did the bass block downtown and all that stuff, and fell in love with it, and ended up buying a house and moving out here. So
That's too cool. And I guess for listeners, the Basque Country of Spain, very mountainous and very
mhm.
reminiscent of Idaho. And I
Yeah.
guess back in the 1800s, they're they were known as great sheep farmers,
Hmm.
sheep herders, really. And outside of running cattle through Idaho, sheep herding was very big for mutton, for wool, for all sorts of things. And essentially, some Basque were hired on to come over and do that through our relatively treacherous mountain terrain.
Hmm.
And a big Basque culture, probably the largest in the U.S., is centered in Boise, Idaho. For those that don't know, there's a Basque block, a Basque museum, and there's a lot of really interesting history. So when you were there with your wife, were y'all in Basque country, or was it just a guy who happened to be Basque or know about it?
Yeah, we went all through Southwest France and then down into Spain. So we kind of hung out in that whole Basque region.
Too cool. And so did you land in Boise or did you land where you're at now right away? Like how did you, because I had to go through the same thing maybe like 2 years after you of
Yeah.
kind of getting a landing spot and then figuring out where I wanted to be longer term in Idaho. And there's so much to
Yeah.
go and look and see and
Yeah.
discover. So what was
Yeah.
that?
So we, we, we liked Boise, and my wife's kind of stipulation was she had to be within striking distance to Whole Foods or Trader Joe's.
Mhm.
And I'm like, all right, like, what's that, like 4 hours, you know? And she was like, no, like an hour. So we compromised where we're at now. And we love it. You know, it's close enough, but it's far enough. And, you know, we're digging it. We made a good choice.
Yeah, we
So,
don't have to say where, but you're a little bit northeast of Boise now, right?
yeah. Yep.
Yeah, good
Yep.
area, kind of the same direction of where we're at up in Atlanta, Idaho. So,
Yeah.
good, amazing country. And I think you're right. You got a relatively quick trip down river
Yeah.
towards town to get in
Yep.
and get your stuff.
Yeah, because that was the thing at the time. I just needed an airport, and I was kind of I was gone a lot. I mean, I was gone probably 70% of the year, and it was kind of, you know, the travel's fun, like flying first class on long haul flights and stuff is fun, but you know, it after 8, 10 years of flying, it kind of wears on you a little bit. So I was actually looking at going to PA school, and there's quite a few. You know, within my idea striking distance to here. So that's kind of why we landed here, and another reason why. But yeah, so
I think you and I are kindred spirits in that way. The you know double platinum flight status, like
yeah,
flying every week, home, gone for a couple weeks or a month, home. It for years, it's a grind. So,
yeah,
um,
yep,
has that pared back recently then for you,
yeah,
or is it still kind of
yeah. So we moved out here, and I think, oh man, what was it? Maybe 6 months or less than a year later, I got a phone call uh, from LA City Fire Department, and they said, "Hey, you applied for a job 2 years ago. This is the last like hiring we're doing off this list, and you want to come out for an interview?" And it was actually the day, the interview date was when I was deploying back to New Guinea with a layover at LAX. So I um, just had them give me a long layover, like an early morning flight into LA, and I caught a taxi to the interview, you know, full suit and everything, and then back to LAX. Flew out, and I got another email that was like, okay, you passed your interview. Your background date is this date, and it was the day I was flying home.
mm,
So put my suit back on. It all just kind of lined up, and then I don't know, it was maybe a month or two later, and I was back in New Guinea, and my teammate at the time, he's like, "Hey, did you hear from the fire department?" And I'm like, "No, I haven't gotten an email, you know." And he goes, "Well, did you check your voicemails?" And I'm like, "Nah, everything's been over email." And you know, like to check your voicemails, I had to log into like T-Mobile
mm,
online and like listen to them through the computer. And there was a lady that she called me, the HR lady, and she's like, "Hey, I want to offer you a conditional employment." And I'm like, "Oh shit," you know, like I got to call this lady back. So I think it was like an 18-hour time difference, and I call from a sat phone, and I'm like, "Hey, there's going to be a delay." You know, and she's like, "Oh," she's like, "I'm glad you called me. If you didn't call me by 5, I was gonna, you know, take you off the list." And I'm like, "All right, well, I'll take the job." And right when I said that, we got toned out on a medevac, and I'm like, "Oh, I gotta go," and I'm like running to the helicopter. I'm like, "I gotta go, but I want the job back on Monday or whatever." So, um, and it all kind of worked out. Like, there's quite a good number of guys that live out of state. So I'm able to trade with my schedule and we didn't have to move back. So
So
um,
what does it look like a couple weeks on, couple weeks off? Like, how does that work?
I usually do 8 to 10 days at a time over there. It's 24-hour shifts. So I just work, and I work quite a bit of overtime because hunting and trapping is kind of expensive. So try to work some overtime, and then I usually come home for the same amount of time, a week or 10 days.
And I'm assuming the last month or two probably was a little more interesting down there. I mean,
Yeah.
we want to get to the trapping part, but given recent history, I'm curious. Like, I mean, with you being gone out of state, like, are you like kind of on call too, like for extenuating circumstances? That's like, hey, like I know you're out on your trap line, but city's on
Yeah.
fire. Get your ass over here.
Yeah. So, yeah, I was actually, um, yeah, I was on a cow elk hunt in Wyoming, and I was with another fireman, and we both called in, and they were like, we're fully staffed. Like, it wasn't a, yeah, it wasn't really a personnel issue, because there were guys that were going into work and they had no resource to put them on.
Gotcha.
So I got back there. I think I got there like 2 days after it all kicked off, and I was there for. I think I was there for 2 weeks. But where my station's at, we're pretty far from the Palisades. We did go to the Hearst fire that was in Silmar, that was part of it, um, and then we have the Angeles National Forest and Latuna Canyon area. So that's always a threat because Latuna burned a few years ago, and that was a pretty big fire. So they tend to kind of leave us there in case something happens, and we'd be like the northeasterly part of LA City, like that last little bit before it hits Pasadena and Burbank.
Well, I mean, you joked about it earlier with being in your 20s, joining the Air Force, but not going full in because you wanted to have your cake and eat it too. But it sounds like you're doing a pretty damn good job with that, getting to live where you get to live, and then getting to go out, work your job,
Yeah.
come back, and enjoy the space you're in.
Yeah, it's yeah, we're definitely blessed in that regard, and it's it is good to like get away from the craziness of a big city. And I mean, most of my adult life has been around like high stress environments and um, you know, a high op tempo, if you will, and it's good to be able to come back here and just kind of turn it off.
And
So
I think that's the perfect segue. So you did Boy Scouts, you saw how to snare a squirrel or a rabbit, you saw some live trapping of cuscus in Papua New Guinea over the last 12, 13 years. After you moved to Idaho, was trapping always in the back of your mind at some point? Did somebody turn you on to modern day trapping at any point, or was it just something you kind of fell into after you moved to Idaho?
uh, definitely something I fell into after we got here. Just honestly, within like the last 3 years, I think. We used to go back to Michigan. I have family back there, and my uncle's a big whitetail hunter, and my dad would take us back there, and we'd sit in a tree stand or a deer blind, and so coming here, it was obviously a different style of hunting. But I never really liked the deer blind. I mean, especially as a kid, you're like fidgety and just can't sit still. And so, being out here, like Western style hunting is definitely more what I'm into, like hiking the hills and all that. And I guess the more you get into it, the more you read and research stuff, and you start to see wolf tracks and um, getting into predator management. I kind of felt like if I'm going to take a deer, I should try to take a wolf or a bear or a cat, to kind of help out or good karma. Um, and when you look at the numbers of harvests the most wolves, it's strapping. So
That's wild. Well, I mean, it's true. What I say is wild is I think you're the first person that I've talked to on the podcast or just in my life who kind of, you know, it seems like you skipped some of the like normal progress into track.
yeah,
Like, like, oh, I'm gonna get into it. Let me see about muskrat or martin, and then
yeah,
you kind of it's almost like this ladder that most people, including myself, work up to. It's like, okay, well, we're gonna do this. I'm gonna trap a fox. Okay, then I'll try to trap a coyote. Oh, we've got wolves, and it's a problem. But it seems like you
yeah,
had the mental math to say, hey, we're out hunting deer and elk. We know wolf are a problem.
yeah,
It's hard to hunt them.
yeah,
What's the solution? And then it sounds like you landed on trapping.
yeah. Yeah, and I kind of alluded to it uh, in a post that I made, but I had a handful of people that were like, brush me off. Good luck. Like, I went down to the trappers convention in Glen Ferry, and this guy, he's like, oh, like you're getting some wolf traps, yeah. What do you trap right now? And I'm like, nothing. And he just laughed. He's like, well, you're like a Pop Warner football player playing in the Super Bowl. Good luck. And I was, like, I don't know. You hear all this stuff, and but whatever,
Let's do a
like
little flash forward. How many wolves have you trapped?
I've gotten two.
Yeah, that's two more than a lot of people. So
Yeah,
I mean, I can get on my soapbox here a little bit. I mean, we talk, and you're now inundated in the culture to a degree, right? So yeah, it's like any other niche thing. Like oftentimes we're our own worst enemy and like eating our own kind of thing.
yeah,
And
yeah,
wolf trapping is hard, and I'm sure you're a testament to how difficult it is. However,
yeah,
there is no prereq to say that you have to go and trap otters and beavers and
yeah,
coyotes. And you're not just an example, you're the perfect example of giving somebody the finger. And I think anybody who's got the brass ones to go and just do it and learn and is adaptable, you can go and do it. But it
yeah.
takes a lot of effort. So you got some of those traps at Glenn's Ferry, you got kind of laughed off. Was that fuel on the fire, or were you the kind of person who was set on it anyways and just kind of let it go off your back like a duck in water?
I was definitely obsessed. Like, before I bought a trap, I read, like, I'm not a huge reader, but despite what the background here says, but um, I read a lot of books about wolves. Like, I was completely obsessed with it. And I did Katie and Tom Schneider and Justin's wolf class that they put on.
Yep.
I was trying to get my buddies to sign up with me, and they were all like, "You're crazy, dude!" Like, and the cool thing is, I got my dad to go with me,
Mm.
so he moved up here, and I figured we could run the trap line together. He used to take me to Michigan, and so instead of taking my 65-year-old dad on a forced march 10 miles out in the backcountry, we can run a trap line together. So we both signed up for the course. But before that, I wanted to get my hands on some traps and kind of, like, I guess, lessen my learning curve, so I didn't show up to the course completely
Yep.
green. So I got a hold of Katie and Justin, and they said that they use Mac Hankins for traps. So got a hold of him, and I said, "Hey, build me whatever you build them. Like, I'm just gonna mirror their system. Works for them." So I did that, and then that's when I picked him up down in Glens Ferry. Mac wasn't the guy that brushed me off. It was some other people down there.
Well, Mac's great. Mac and I are going
Oh,
back. He'll be on here shortly too,
oh, cool.
hopefully. So, uh,
Yeah.
Great guy. So did you end up with no BS traps? Is that what you ended up with? Or
No, I'm doing the Duke 850s, and then
okay.
he modifies them a little bit. Um, so yeah, got him.
And are those mostly, I mean, those are on a drag, swivels, springs, like what's the setup look like?
Yeah, so it's a drag and a ground anchor.
Okay.
Um, After hearing Katie and Justin's story about tracking their three wolves for like 6 miles, like I'm in my whole upbringing in adult life, it's always been about redundancy. So I was like, hell yeah, like drags and ground anchors. That sounds good to me.
Yep.
Um,
Way to go. And I've
so,
actually got one of these new hammer down drivers right behind me too for some of those
oh,
early
nice.
anchors. So,
Yeah.
but cool. So you did that, you picked those up, you did the course with your dad. And this is, I'm going to say, well, year zero, right? For you, you're
Yeah.
learning, you're reading, you go to um, the course that they put on. I think well, that's up near Cascade that they do it, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And
Yep.
you know, when you did that, and I mean, we'll do a plug for them right here because they do it every year. I know there's a good turnout. Hopefully, I'll get to come out this year myself. Um, you know, when you sat around the campfire, like from that, like coursework, right? Like field work, so to speak, like learning how to do the proper set, learning how to do the anchor. You know, I'm
Hmm.
sure there's some talk about boiling traps, scent control, whatever it is that they deem important. You know, what was your biggest takeaway from that? And when you left there, did you feel like, okay, I got this now? Like I can go and do it and replicate, and then it's a matter of time.
I think it was probably the scent management. Because they talked about how you can fool a wolf, but you're never gonna fool its nose.
Hmm.
Um, and just from in the past working with dogs, and how well they can smell. I mean, they can smell a dead body through like 3 feet of concrete. So, you put it into a wolf that's a canine, but it's been in the wild, much like the folks in PNG. Like they know that terrain. Like they know what smells right, they know what smells wrong. So I guess that would have been my biggest takeaway. And that's one thing that I probably take overboard is the scent control. Um,
Are
but
you doing like ozone? Like, do you have your traps in like well curated bins when you're getting out on your line? Like, what's the number one scent control measure that you do?
I don't touch a tool or my trap or anything without like like medical gloves on, pretty much. And then um, when I like pull them out of the boiling water, I use like a like a hay hook to
Hmm.
grab it that I've boiled that, and then I take it over and I hang it. And then my boots, I keep them in like a bin of dirt. The What I keep my traps in when I'm going out to the trap line is like I think it's like a 25-gallon blue water jug that was like brand new, sterilized, food safe, whatever. So it has no scent on it. And then new leather gloves. Just I don't know, just any little thing I can do to not put any kind of scent on it is what I do.
And so you did the course, you got your dad through, your dad's up there. What does year one look like for you? Like, is it you've been out, you've been hunting, you've been in the area for a while, you've seen wolf tracks? Is it just like I've seen tracks up here? This is relatively accessible where my dad can also get in and check if I'm not here. Let's just go lay steel. Like what was the thought process and how you approached your first wolf line?
I have this wily dog that's we're pretty sure he's part Catahoula,
Okay.
which if you look at the Catahoula, it's supposedly it has wolf in it, and we didn't know that yet. But I took this dog with me, and we're walking where I know these wolves have been running, and he immediately darts off trail, runs over to these trees, hackles her up. He starts like pawing at the dirt, kicking around, peeing on everything. And I'm like, well, let's try this spot. And even before I didn't even bring traps with me that day. I think I had like had so much lead up to putting a trap in the ground that I didn't want to fail, and if I didn't put them in the ground, I wouldn't fail.
Mm.
And I went back to work, and it was always like, okay, next time I'm home, I'll do it. And I was always finding excuses not to do it. And I was on the phone with Justin Small, and he's like, dude, you're ready. Just put them in the ground. Like, stop thinking about it. Just, you know what to do. You've studied it, you've researched it. Like, he was probably thinking you asked me way too many questions, but he was like, just do it. You're ready. And I'm like, all right. So next time I got home, we put them in the ground. I think we did it October 1st.
Mm.
So I missed like a month or 2 weeks whenever the season opens, but um, yeah, put them in on the 1st of October.
Nice. And was that one of those moments where you're out there putting it in and then it's very anticlimactic and you're like, I don't know why I didn't do that earlier?
A little bit, but I don't know if my dad will listen to this or not, but I'm gonna tell on him. So he my dad was a career Marine, was a SWAT cop for 12 years after that, and then he contracted in Afghanistan for a couple years. He's been rode hard, and he
Mm.
can't, like, it's very hard for him to bend over and set a trap, especially like not putting your knees on the ground or anything. So um, I'm trying to get this trap set, and my dad like completely lays down on the ground prone. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, I just did all this scent control, like boiled these things and like haven't touched anything. And he's like, sorry, son, I just, I can't, you know. So like I'm glad we got him in the ground, but I'm like, like just ruined everything. So but the best part is 2 days later we had a coyote in one of the traps. And of course we go up there to get it, and he's like nudging me. He's like, guess it doesn't matter if you lay on the ground or not. So I think scent control is huge. But
Being
maybe
lucky is better. That's been
yeah,
my MO and experience. Like I do my best and there's moments where I'm not and I'm like, there's no way I'm catching a critter because I've been negligent or I'm so far back and you know, my cotton gloves are stuck to my hand and I can't get
yeah,
something or my fingers caught in the trap and I gotta like use it. So,
yeah,
and then I'll get lucky there. And then
yeah,
where I'm like, sometimes where I'm super diligent, nothing. So, I mean,
yeah,
there's an element of luck involved too, I think.
yeah, I think so.
So you got the coyote,
Yeah.
and then how long was it before you guys connected with your first wolf?
So I think it was exactly 30 days because it was the night of Halloween. Um, and I have another good buddy that was helping me. And he's been helping me with, he has a lot of cameras out, and he's like, just borrow a couple of my cameras. They're expensive, just see if they work for you.
Mm.
And I go to bed pretty early, and I leave my phone in the office, so it's not in my room. And um, I wake up, I let the dogs out, and I'm checking my phone, and there's like 20 missed calls from this guy, and like Facebook calls and like WhatsApp. And he's tried to call me on like every app you can think of. And
Is this a person I might know?
I don't know.
All right, we can
Uh,
talk after the show, but
okay.
I know a similar person up near you that is very, uh, when he needs to get a hold of you, he's going to try to get a hold of you on every single device.
Okay. Um, so uh, then I like check the cameras, or I think he texted me. I think he's like, dude, you got a wolf. Um, oh, actually, I got to back up to this story. Sorry.
Okay.
Um, so we caught the coyote. I should have grabbed my journal. I've been journaling all this, but caught the coyote 2 days after we put the Sorry, that was snow falling off the roof. Put the traps in. 2 days later, caught a coyote. Um, uh, my buddy with the cameras hit me up and he's like, "Hey, I just had him come through another area. Um, they'll probably be to your traps in like a week."
Hmm.
And that night they were at my traps, and it was like 7 miles as the crow flies. So they walked through. They kind of sniffed and pawed where the coyote was, but they didn't. They just missed stepping on a dirt hole set, the same one that the coyote hit. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm in the right place. Um, and then it would have been 2 days before Halloween, so at the 29th, um, the whole pack came through a dirt hole set, like kind of in the same area, um, and they didn't step on it. And my dad and I were like, damn, like we're right there, like, you know, um, and we think we have them pegged at coming through like every 2 weeks. So we go up there the next day and well, I called Justin. Justin's like, yeah, just put some more traps in, they'll be back. Um, and he's like, take some of your dog poop up there
Mm-hmm.
and put that up there. And I'm like, okay. So my poor dog, I'm like following him around in the morning, like, I was trying to like catch some of his pee, and like I've completely like lost my mind at this point with trapping. And so we go up there and we turn this place into like a minefield. Like there's just traps everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 days later, they come back through, and I caught that wolf in 3 traps. So 2 fronts and then a rear. Um, and yeah, I talked to my buddy and he's like, dude, we got to go up there and get it. So me, my dad, and him went up there and got it. And I think it was like 5:30 in the morning. And I sent the pictures to Katie and Justin. And Katie called me at like 5:45 in the morning, and she's like, I'm so stoked for you. That's awesome, blah, blah, blah. And she was all out of breath. And I'm like, well, maybe she, like, knowing her, she's got like 100-pound rucksack on, and she's like on a treadmill in her basement trying to be quiet to keep the kids asleep. But she was actually hiking out to her elk spot.
Oh, nice.
So she's like whispering, she's all out of breath. She's like, okay, I gotta go. I'm like, okay. So it's just cool that like I've taken people out hunting and gotten them their first deer and stuff, and it brings joy to me. So like it's cool to see them, like they're super happy at the little bit of success that I've had this year. So that's cool.
Man, awesome. I mean, like, obviously you got a little bit of the know through cell cam, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But what was it like when you and your dad and your buddy like started to walk up on this? Like I know it's been like year so in the making, all the research, all the, you know, trial error, the misses. Like what was that like walking up on that? I mean, this would really be your outside of that coyote, your second trapped animal ever. Is that
Yeah.
fair?
Yeah. 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 The coyote and then that wolf. It was, yeah, it was, I kind of, I kind of wish you could like, and I guess you could, but like, I wish I could have taken more time with them in the trap,
Yeah.
but it's also, you want to be ethical, and you're like, I just, because I think wolves are cool. I
Mm.
mean, they're the more research you do on them and learn about them, they're incredible predators. Um, and I wish I could have sat there and like, I don't know, like studied it more, I guess, or like, but we walked up on it, we looked at it, we were like, man, this is wild, and I
And
was
I
kind of
think
like,
that's one thing that people, until you walk up on a live wolf,
yeah,
like pictures, videos, nothing can do that justice
mm-mm,
until
no,
you walk up on it. And then all the research you do around those animals, the appreciation you have, it
yeah,
doesn't get diminished. If anything, it just like tenfolds of like,
yeah,
holy shit, this is a real animal, like a
yeah,
real predator.
yeah. Well, it's also like how you said, most people won't be able to trap a wolf, or won't, you know, get that, and it's you, you know, to see it, like to see it right there. It's almost like this mythical animal that you see its prints every now and again, and you know they're out there, but they're pretty elusive, and um, to be able to see it that close is pretty incredible.
Man, and what was your dad's reaction? Did he lay down prone next to it?
No, I should have gotten him to take a picture laying next to it, but no, we like we've had successes together hunting and stuff, and it's it's good. Like nobody cried, but we definitely hugged, and like it was it was a lot of work that paid off. So
And then so afterwards, again, second caught animal, like I'll give my spiel on like my journey, which is I did start on the other end, like small, and kind of worked my way up naturally. Not because I was like the right thing to do, I just didn't know any better.
yeah,
But along the way, as I was starting to skin stuff out, I screwed up so much,
yeah,
from squirrels to foxes to coyotes to beavers, everything in between. I had
yeah.
a knife on it. It got better from there. What was your approach for this wolf? Like, were you planning to skin it out? Did you skin it out? Did you take it to a taxidermist? Like, what was the MO for you guys with like, oh, okay, we got this wolf now? Was it a little bit of like the dog who chases the car and then the car parks and he catches up to it? He's like, oh shit, what now?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I think we ended up just taking it because you don't want to field dress it or gut it right there. So, and it was only in the trap like 8 hours or something like that. So, um, it was still in good shape. Belly hadn't turned green or anything. So, um, we got it out, and pretty much went to Fish and Game, and then I took it over to a taxidermist to have him do it. It's something that I would really, well, I don't know. You put those traps in the ground and you're like, I might not ever get anything, you know? So you kind of, yeah, I probably should have thought about that step. That wasn't in much of my reading, and research, but um, I probably should have done more of that, and I'd like to get into it. It's just kind of a time thing for me, where it's hard enough to get up to the traps every 3 days, and um, you know get my dad up there, and then now the whole wintertime thing now has kind of been a learning curve for me too. I've pulled all my traps and trying to figure out another spot to get them back in for the last couple months of the season. But yeah, the last two I've just taken them to the taxidermist, let them
Yeah,
do it.
I mean, that's a good way to not screw it up. I'll give you
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So speaking of, I was going to ask this question. So like, yeah, if I'm on one end starting from the bottom working up to wolves, you're on the other end going from wolves and working your way down. Like if you didn't have the time constraints you did, because you made a perfect and valid point too. Like, man, I almost haven't done any beaver tracking. I caught a beaver and an otter. That's it this
Mhm.
season. But I was also focused more on wolves, which means there's a lot more packing in, going and doing it. It's very hard to juggle all of them unless you just happen to have like the perfect synergy of having a great river with beaver and otter running through your wolf zone.
Yeah.
Um, do, if you didn't have your work commitments, like what would you want to trap? I mean, outside of everything, is there anything else that you've read about that just kind of piques your interest that you're like, huh, I want to kind of get into that as well?
Not really. I
Fair
mean,
enough.
maybe coyotes, like yeah, like maybe on like big ranches or something, like just lay in a bunch of coyote traps. um there was a guy I met at the Wolf Academy that he lives in Washington, and he never hunted, never trapped, and I think he's in his 50s or 60s, and he had this little dog that was like his life, and the coyotes got his dog. And after that, like he said that he kills like hundreds of coyotes a year. Like the dude is just complete savage.
Well, that is some John Wick level. You don't mess
Yeah,
with a man's dog, though. That's
yeah. So yeah, maybe coyotes. And I don't know. I think I just kind of got obsessed with the whole wolf thing, and uh, yeah, maybe I
What's the
should have
problem?
said,
I mean, I think it's interesting because you hear folks talk like it's not a big problem, but we're way past our carrying capacity. And you've
yeah,
sent me awesome cell cam footage. Like, again, we're kind of working opposite ends of 100-mile radius.
hmm,
And I'm sure some of those packs that you've had go through your area have gone through mine. And the
yeah,
guy who I think you might have been talking to, like, I'll get pictures from him. He'll be like, they'll be over near you in this amount of time. And it's usually
yeah,
pretty right. Sometimes earlier, sometimes later. But
yeah,
they're on these big loops. And yeah, it's a big wilderness area. Yeah, it's a lot of land, but there's also a finite amount of ungulates,
yeah,
deer, elk,
yeah,
moose, even in this area to some degree. And
hmm,
it's devastating. Like when you drive my road, and I know you've been up that way too, like in the wintertime, this time of year,
oh yeah,
you're gonna see multiple elk carcasses on the road up, whether that be from lions or wolves or both.
yeah, yeah,
And it's devastating. So like when you do get into it and you read about it, and then you're in a position to actually see it, it's
yeah,
hard not to have it like just sink its teeth into you and be like, wow, like this is a problem and it's a problem that I can actually help with.
right, yeah, yeah. And I originally wanted to trap more up by you,
Hmm.
um, but
Pain in
it's
the
a
ass.
yeah, it's a little hard to get to, and there's a few spots that I wouldn't mind talking to you about that I would really like to get up to, and trap in there or hunt wolves up in there. But
Well,
yeah,
snow's about to thaw, so we can get out there.
I hope so.
Well, I say about to thaw, it's really about June.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
awesome, man. Well, first and foremost, we're actually already coming up on an hour. Time flies.
Okay. All
Uh,
right.
I really appreciate you hopping on. I mean,
Yeah.
you're doing a lot of awesome work. I know people can follow you on, Facebook, Instagram, all of that. I know you're not like a huge presence of like putting it out there, but you know, I hope that if you didn't go to the Glens Ferry one in January, you're there in March and you're wearing like a t-shirt with you next to your two catches.
Super Bowl champion.
Yeah, exactly. And walking by there and being like, "Oh yeah, well, oh, did you tell me that that was going to be near impossible? Oh, Pop Warner. Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah,
Check
yeah.
out the ring." But
Yeah.
it's a good nod for people, honestly, and for a lot of new trappers listening to this. Like, there's always naysayers, but at the same
Yeah.
time, like, just go and do it. Like,
Yeah.
what would have happened to you if you had put steel on the ground and not caught anything? Big whoop. But you
Yeah.
did because you
Yeah.
put steel on the ground, you studied, you did the right things, and you were met with some success, which is awesome.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, Katie and Justin helped me a lot. I mean, the cell cameras help a lot too, but you can't rely on those. Like batteries die. I've got one right now that's completely buried in snow. Like,
Mm.
um, and the second, I know we're probably running out of time, but the second wolf that I got, um, the pack had never come through in the same day. Like you'd see them go through and then they'd be gone.
Mhm.
And the second one that I got, I only had one camera up out of like the four or whatever, and it caught a wolf running through, and then a couple hours ran back, and I was like, I got to go check that. So like I went up that day. It was, like I was just up there the day before, but I'm like, I think something's in there.
Hmm.
And sure enough, I went up there and there was one in there on a set that had no camera on it. So the cameras are definitely a great tool, but it's not, you got to go up there and actually put eyes on it and check.
Yep. Yeah. And that's the one thing I get butthurt about is because we don't have any self service where I'm at, so I don't
Yeah.
even. I'll
Yeah.
put some cameras out, but you still got to go and take your little SD card reader, and that's
Yeah.
a
Yep.
that's a pain. And then carrying that extra stuff in. So usually I just end up opting out of it and then
Yeah.
putting on the snowshoes and getting after it. But man,
Yep.
I appreciate it, Chuck. Like this is
Yeah.
awesome. Um, I'll put the link to Justin and Kate's, not seminar, but their course that they do every summer in the show notes for
Yeah.
people who are curious, as well as links to all the other stuff. But man, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And, for everybody listening, we'll catch you on another episode of the Okayest Trapper podcast. Now, if I can only figure out how to get this to stop recording this time, they changed the buttons on me. All right, where are you at? I'm gonna have to edit this out. That'll be cute. Huh. Well, I'll be damned. Where are you? Oh, next time, everybody.